So this topic, thanks for staying and having this opportunity to share this little bit of wellness. We thought that this would be a nice kickoff to a year of wellness for the department. And the title of what I'm going to talk about, and hopefully I'm not going to talk a long time, Thriving at Work, Finding Purpose by Aligning with What Matters Most. And really what we're going to talk about is purpose. So this is our very brief roadmap, defining purpose, talking a little bit about actually some of the research on purpose related to increased health and happiness. And then we're going to have the opportunity, hopefully you all got a handout, to do a little bit of your own visioning or remembering about purpose and chatting with your neighbors about it. So purpose, of course, purpose can have a really simple definition to be simply why we do something. It can be a goal that we have to accomplish something or attain something. But the angle that we're taking today for this reason is really about a higher order goal that's driven by or has some sort of deep value. You can think of this orientation on purpose that I'm referring to as sort of a personal why that can help to provide meaning in our lives that is comes from a deeper place within us. So maybe many of you out in the audience feel like you have a life purpose or a sense of purpose. Some people come into the world, I think, naturally sort of feeling like I have a sense of purpose. I had friends in growing up who maybe knew they wanted to serve people by being a teacher. I'm going to grow up and be a teacher. I'm going to grow up and be a physician or a firefighter. Some people come to purpose in life through other means. Maybe sometimes people come to it through challenges in life, like as a child perhaps, through an illness or through being bullied or some other challenge. Sometimes folks can emerge into adulthood then with an increased sense of purpose that they would like to either overcome their challenge or perhaps help others to emerge from, overcome, or heal from their own challenge. And that can help provide a sense of purpose or meaning for someone in their life. Not all of us have that. When I started reading about purpose, and actually I didn't really mention that these two books here on the lower part of the slide are both written by Vic Strecker, who is a professor of public health at the University of Michigan, and he's written these couple of books on purpose. He kind of came to a sense of purpose in his own life through some tragedy in his own life, and now he's done a fair amount of research and has found that purpose actually can contribute to our health and happiness in many ways. You can think of purpose as this sort of internal navigation system, like it's sort of an internal GPS. And there was more I was going to say here, and it's just flown right out of my head. So I'm going to go on. George Bernard Shaw, a famous early 20th century, early 19th century Irish playwright, thought a lot about purpose, and he had this to say. This is the true joy in life, the being used for a purpose recognized by yourself as a mighty one. For the moment you marry yourself to the right purpose, you become a force of nature. So I'm actually going to slide over a couple of slides so that I'm not talking too much and we have time to do our activity. But I wanted to give you a little bit of an idea about purpose because, of course, it's been studied now. And more research is mounting that actually having a greater sense of purpose in one's life gives one a better chance at actually changing. So people have studied folks that are addicted to drugs, and when we've found that those folks have a greater sense of purpose in life, they're more likely to stay clean. After 6 months, they're half as likely to relapse. Also, smokers who write their core values are more likely to accept anti-smoking messages. There really is a mounting list of evidence now pointing to having a sense of purpose, helping us to avoid illness or make us healthier. So you're less likely to have a heart attack, less likely to have a stroke, half as likely to develop Alzheimer's, less likely to become depressed, more relaxed. Doesn't sound all that bad, right? This was a recent study that came out from a group from the University of Michigan last year, demonstrating that folks with a higher sense of purpose in life are more likely to survive, have a greater longevity. This hits a little closer to home. This study just actually came out this year and looked at family medicine residency program directors, who we know that family medicine docs can suffer a greater incidence of burnout and fatigue. And this study looked at directors of these residency programs and found that those that had a greater sense of purpose experienced less burnout, had less fatigue, and overall greater quality of life. So I hope I gave you just at least a little window into some of the evidence. I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time there, but really then looking at why does purpose help us in these areas. There's theories that this purpose makes us less defensive, so we're less resistant. We're really more open, more willing to use proactive coping skills, to consider change, to engage in healthier behaviors. It really helps us to kind of get out of our small selves and into something beyond ourselves, help us feel a connection to something greater than ourselves. And so maybe you're sitting in the audience wondering, what's my purpose? Do I have a strong sense? How can I get a purpose? Do I need one right now? Do I need to define it? And does it change over time? Because actually our purpose can change depending on what's going on in our life. We can have different priorities at different phases of our life. But we can sort of connect into our sense of purpose by connecting and reflecting on what matters most to us in our life. Also seeing beauty in just the everyday mundane in life. Things that inspire awe and hope and gratitude can connect us into our purpose. There's this concept of being broken open, which is kind of what I alluded to at the beginning. So if someone might experience some sort of tragedy, unfortunately not that they're looking for that in life, but that can often confront us with our own mortality and have us question, what is the purpose? What is my meaning for being here? There are also contemplative practices like meditation that can promote greater contentment, greater sense of contributing to human welfare that can also connect us into our purpose. So I'm hoping that we can just engage in a little of that right now for your benefit, to maybe connect you in a little more deeply to your own sense of purpose. So we have an activity sheet here, and before we even look at it, I'm going to ask us to maybe take a moment to reflect on what we might feel grateful for. So if you're comfortable, you can close your eyes. You certainly don't have to. You could just take your gaze low. I love this quote by A.A. Milne about Piglet. Piglet noticed that even though he had a very small heart, it could hold a rather large amount of gratitude. So I invite you to just reflect for a moment on first maybe just one small thing that you are grateful for today. It could be a very small thing. It could be your hot shower this morning, or this meeting here, or anything that you feel grateful for today. And one more gratitude, maybe one bigger thing in your life, whatever it could be, not necessarily connected to today, something in your life that you are particularly grateful for. then when you've connected in with that, kind of felt it in your heart, we're going to move on and take a look at our activity sheet. So this sense of gratitude, sorry? Oh. Sorry, I should have asked. And for those of you out in video land, I think they got this activity sheet got sent out along with connected to the invitation for this event, so you can find it there. So cultivating a little sense of gratitude can also help us to plug into things that are important to us. So even just recognizing what you're grateful for, if you ask, why am I grateful for that, can help you to understand what's important to you. So you have a little grid at the top of the page, and it's not a table that's in any particular order, but it just has some words in it, similar to this word cloud that's up here. And there are words that are connected to value in some way. So I invite you to reflect on the words in the grid or the words up here on the screen, and perhaps identify 1 to 3 of those that particularly resonate with you. What resonates in your heart? Often these values are bigger than ourselves, and sometimes they can serve as sort of a raw material for our purpose. Again, just to keep in mind that our purpose and our values can change throughout life. So, you know, something that might have been important to you 10 years ago might still be important, but you might have more important things. So reflecting right now what's important to you. We'll take just a couple of minutes here, and I'll let you have some personal time to think. So I don't mean to trivialize at all what's important to you by having you master it right here in a couple of minutes in a meeting where you're sitting next to your coworkers. Like, these things can be deep, and they can take a lot of time to really reflect. If you haven't done an exercise like this before, you know, you might be looking and going, well, a lot of those things look really important to me. How am I supposed to pick the 1 or the 2? And so no pressure to pick those 1 or 2 important things, but just to connect into some things that resonate with you can, I think, be valuable and telling about what's important to you right now in your life. So if you've had a chance to think about that, then we'll see how far we get with this activity. We kind of thought maybe we'd just get to this next question, and then we want to give you guys the opportunity to chat a little bit. So thinking about people in your life that you admire, whether they are family members, whether they're famous people, whether they're cartoon characters, can also help you to plug in a little bit to what's important to you. So I'm not going to tell you really all the reasons for the folks on this screen, but these are some folks that are important to me. The one at the top is my mom. I admire her deeply. She's no longer with us anymore, but often I think about her when I'm making choices and moving in directions in my life. So she often serves as sort of a rudder for me as I navigate life. So you can kind of think of people that you admire. And if you reflect on folks that you admire, that you might make decisions in your life because you would think a person like this might make similar decisions. That makes sense. I'm not sure I'm going to make the same decisions as Calvin and Hobbes, but I admire this sort of sense of freedom that Calvin has, and then also this very grounded level-headedness that Hobbes brings. I also deeply admire the Dalai Lama. So I invite you now to reflect on someone, a couple people in your life that you admire. It could be very personal. You don't necessarily have to share it with your neighbor, but if you know of someone, or more than someone, a couple people that you admire, kind of write it down, maybe a couple of words about why, or a sentence about why, and then I invite you to turn to your neighbor and share if you're comfortable with that. I love that you guys are engaged in conversation. Beautiful. I hope it was around this. Sometimes it happens. We digress into other things, of course, which is fine, because connecting here, I think, is a big part of this too. I didn't say this, but I had a little conversation with Matt over here and asked him about who he admired, and he was saying that he has a really hard time. There's no like public person or one person that he really admires. And I was saying that I actually also sometimes have difficulty with that because I feel like we could possibly set ourselves up for disappointment because no one's perfect. And we've heard plenty of times of people that we thought were great and wonderful, and then we find out some dark secret or dark corner of their life. And I think that just points to the human experience, that there's no one's perfect, but we still have some things that we can admire and aspire to. Did you guys have good conversations around this? Is there anyone that would like to share something?
Hey all. So I'll just share someone that I admire very deeply. His name was Tom Eblin. He was a mentor of mine when I was in college. He was a professor of journalism and communications at KU. Really taught me a lot about being, at that point in time, a journalist, which is where I started my career. Taught me a lot about honesty and integrity and hard work. I was real fortunate when a few years later I was able to go back and work for the university, and Tom became my boss. And I got to see a whole different side of him and have many, many more life lessons from him. And unfortunately, he's no longer with us, but he's someone that really shaped me and how I work and how I view life. So.
Great. Thanks, Justin. Anyone else?
So John and I had a great conversation about traits that we admired and that we had in common, that people we admired, his grandmother and my father, tirelessness and sort of relentless desire to help others and making it look effortless and kind of being their natural mode of being. And I'm sure it wasn't effortless, but they made it look that way. My dad is one of the people I admire the most, and who I'd like to emulate. He's 73, still works over 12 hours a day, 6 days a week as a family doc in Lebanon. And he's one of my inspirations. And so it was really cool that we had the same traits that we admire.
Thanks. Anyone else? Well, we are just 3 minutes shy of 6 o'clock, and this is kind of how far we thought we would get in this activity. But I'd just like to show you, if we had more time, we could kind of dive a little deeper, but you have this worksheet that you can take with you, and if you will let me give you the assignment of finishing it, please do. Another perspective to think about what's important to us and what we really value deeply is there's a couple different ways you could think about this. You could think, put yourself in the situation of being at your 95th birthday. And there are going to be a parade of people that are going to get up to speak about you and celebrate you. And if you could have lived your best life, you could have really accomplished everything that you wanted to accomplish and have really been your best self, what would these people say about you? So that's a deep reflection. Another perspective is something like a retirement party, and gives you a little bit more perspective on perhaps how you would have liked to live your work life. So if people were getting up to celebrate you at your retirement party, and some of you may be close, some of you may be farther away, what if you could have been your best self at work, what would people say about you at work? And then being able to put some of these things together, your values, the person that you would like to emulate or you admire, things that people would say about you, and then reflecting perhaps on some goals that you have in life, either now, immediate or lifelong kind of goals, and putting it together into a purpose statement. And then I would say, you know, if this is something new and you feel like really connected to this, write it out, post it somewhere prominently that you can see it and kind of continually be reminded of it. You know, some of the research that that has shown, especially this one about the family medicine residency directors, the tool that they use to sort of measure purpose had people reflect on, you know, how often in your day do you connect into your purpose. So it wasn't just about, you know, how deeply people feel purpose, but how frequently they reflect on it. So that can keep us connected to it and keep us coming back, and then helps to navigate, can help us to navigate our choices in life. So that's all I have for you guys. Any questions or feedback? Thanks.